Marker.
My name's Anna. I'm a life coach. I'm a speaker. I'm a content creator, and I get to kind of share my story as a career path now, which is super cool. Growing up was hard, but not in the ways that I think people would anticipate. I was a very anxious kid, and I had a lot of behavioral and emotional issues. I remember the first time I saw a psychiatrist was when I was 6. And I think that later on had a big impact on my understanding of self and the way that I thought I was broken or something needed to be fixed. But I had a really great at-home life. My parents were wonderful and loved me the best that they could through all of that. I had a really good relationship with my siblings. But I like to say that my childhood stopped kind of at about 13. That's when my depression started, and that's when I started using substances. And this all kind of stemmed from sexual traumas. This stemmed from mental illness on its own, as well as pretty severe bullying. I don't know if bullying is the right word because these were death threats. These were suicide encouragements. We had the police at my house a lot because people would come to our home and vandalize and destroy it. It felt a lot heavier than bullying, and I think that really impacted my ability to see myself as worthy or lovable. And because of that, I went really deep into my addiction, into my substance abuse. I went to rehab 3 times. I was in hospitals a lot. I think a lot of what people said to me, I very much internalized because it was such a consistent message of you're not worth it. You're not deserving. You're not lovable. Something's wrong with you. You're broken. And I eventually agreed and was incredibly, incredibly reckless with my life after that. The core beliefs that I had about myself was I'm worthless. I'm broken. I'm damaged. I can't be loved, and I'm not deserving. I felt so outcasted, and I felt so different and damaged. And it was incredibly defeating in a way where I didn't even try to fight it. I very much accepted it for what it was, and the idea that I could be anything different than worthless was not even a thought to me. When I was 25, I got diagnosed with bipolar 2 and postpartum depression. And both of those blindsided me to hear, but made so much sense when I heard them. I almost felt some relief because I really thought I was just losing my mind. I didn't even consider that there were other diagnoses I could have had. But looking back and reflecting on my behaviors at the time and what I was going through and what I was experiencing, getting those diagnoses, I was like, that makes so much sense. And now I have a little bit of a grasp of what's going on and I can treat it. Most importantly, I can treat it was the big thing. I was doing all the things to help myself, and that was what was the most frustrating part about this story. I was in therapy. I was taking meds. I was trying to eat right. I was trying to exercise. I was trying to do all the things to help myself. Nothing was working. And that got me to a very, very defeated place where I was actively trying to do something, but I was so sick and so unwell that that wasn't enough. And I didn't know that it wasn't enough. So in the days prior, I was just at a place of absolute defeat. I was exhausted. I knew I was trying to help myself and it wasn't working. And I ran out of options. I didn't have any more options. So the day of that viral story, I was actually in a therapy session. And this was kind of like my last attempt to get help. Unfortunately, it didn't happen the way I had wanted it to. I definitely alluded to the fact with my therapist that things were not looking great. I didn't really want to fight anymore. I asked for more resources. I asked for inpatient, outpatient. I really told him that I'm at the end of my rope here and I need something more. Otherwise, I'm not going to see tomorrow. Unfortunately, that message was not received and he let me leave. And I think that was the most heart-wrenching moment of that, where I was like, okay, I tried. And so I left. At that point, I started panicking and I pulled my car over. I pulled my car over at the nearest parking lot because I was not breathing. And I pulled over and I remember looking up from my steering wheel and I saw a really large concrete wall and it separated the freeway from the parking lot I was sitting in. And I remember my heart just sinking when I realized that I no longer had the will to stop myself. But for a brief moment, I looked up in my rearview mirror and I saw my son's empty car seat. And I found 30 seconds of courage. And I picked up my phone and I dialed 911. And I did the most drastic thing I've ever done, which was report myself to the authorities and ask that they get there as quickly as possible. And they did. Seeing my son's seat changed my mind, but even more so, it was something I could cling on to live for. And it looks different for everyone, but finding something, anything, that gave me a reason to think, okay, maybe there's a different road to take here. Maybe there's a different option. Maybe I can try one final time because of this meaningful thing or this purposeful thing, and give it one more go. And that was the push I needed. And I had absolutely no idea that single push, that single attempt of being like, okay, we're going to stop. We're going to try one more thing, ended up just launching my life into such a different direction. The paramedics arrive and they find me in a panic. I'm not really breathing. I'm not really coherent. This part of the story, I really struggle to remember because I feel like I almost blacked out and dissociated. But I do know that they sat with me for about 45 minutes on the curb, just talking to me, which is not typically protocol here. And when I spoke with them, they mentioned that a lot of paramedics might take the easy route and call for the police, especially if you're not cooperative. So they approached me with such empathy, such compassion, and especially in the moments where I was just blubbering, not coherent, not communicative, but I was able to say, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And there was one line that really stuck out to me that my paramedic said, and it was so simple, but it made me feel so seen. And he was just like, let's just try one more time. Just one more time. And that was the first time that I felt like someone was with me and someone had seen me in over a year. And it was the smallest thing. It was the smallest thing that had the biggest impact. I never would have expected the reaction that I got from sharing that story, because I was literally just talking to myself in a mirror, very casually sharing this, but it just took off. And what really resonated with that was that there were so many people who this phrase had a similar impact on them that it did on me. And that's such a good way to think about it, especially when you're at your wits and you feel like you can't do it anymore and you feel like you have nothing left, is to really chunk it out and make it really small and say, let's just try one more time. We don't have to worry about tomorrow or the next day or the next week, but just one more. You absolutely have the ability to change your own life if you just believed in yourself enough to try, because I didn't. But as soon as I tried, and as soon as I started to kind of fight back, I started to win a little bit. I had to kind of set aside my life and really take care of these acute issues, which meant being in a partial hospitalization program for a couple months. And then I got downgraded to an outpatient program and really pausing my life, which is hard to do. You make a lot of excuses as to why I can't get help. I don't have time. I have a job. I have a child. Doing that was the first step. And those gave me the tools to empower myself on my own. And when I really thought about it, I was like, okay, how can I empower my life in a way I haven't done? Because clearly what I was doing wasn't working for me. What do I need to do differently? And that's where I absolutely purged everything. I imploded my whole life in a very, very deliberate way. I quit my job. It made me miserable. I left my marriage. It wasn't fulfilling me. I had to move back home. I lost basically everything and had to start over. But giving myself a blank canvas, even if it was really painful, even if it was really terrifying, because I was scared the whole time, it gave me an opportunity to kind of rewrite my script in a way that felt authentic and honest to me, but one that felt worth living for. One that felt really, really worth living for. My advice for anyone who feels like they want to give up is knowing that it's not too late and you're not too far gone and you don't have to be a product of the very worst things that have happened to you. I think a lot of times we can get stuck in our stories. And while our stories are super, super important, they can limit us in our narratives and how we understand ourselves, right? My self-concept absolutely kept me stuck. So if you are in a moment where you feel like you cannot do it, pause. Try and look at things differently and know that if you have to take it one step at a time, one moment at a time, if you have to crawl your way out, that counts. Break it down as much as you need to. And being able to prioritize yourself. I think that's something a lot of people struggle with, is taking and giving themselves the space and the moments to do what they need to do to be okay. And simply giving yourself permission to do that can sometimes make a really big difference. It's not too late to change your mind.